I know it's the college football show, but for me, it's show number 3 today. Appreciate you stopping by here at the Voice of College Football. Please like, subscribe, do those two things, and I'll be happy. And you will too, because that means you'll get the notifications for when we go live, which is Monday through Friday, 4 p.m. Eastern Time. A lot of good folks in the chat. John, Jackson, Mike, good to see all of you. I have left the call-in line there in the chat. If you want to give me a call to talk college football, I'm here. All right. Otherwise, we're going to go through the news of the day. I got to say, I put about 1.3 seconds into producing this show. So we are going to go through the news headlines of the day and anything you would like to discuss concerning college football. Check out the Ole Miss live show that we just presented on the Ole Miss channel. It's a good time. And also the recruiting show with myself and Leanne Herring. That's every Tuesday. I know it's Thursday. It's every Tuesday at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, right here at the Voice of College Football. Sounds like I need some water, doesn't it? Dan Lanning's getting paid. Let's check it out. Dan Lanning reached a New Year 6-year deal with Oregon. Let's see. I would love to have a full rundown, full list of all the major college football coaches and how much money they make. And then just like when I remember back in the day in USA Today, they used to, on the first day of the Major League Baseball season, they would print out everyone's roster and how much money every player in Major League Baseball made. And you would sit there and say, well, yeah, sure, he makes that and he makes that, and that makes sense. Whoa, why is he making $8.3 million? Dun, dun, dun. Oh, man, he's a bargain. $1 million? Would love to do that with college football coaches. Dan Lanning has agreed to a new contract with Oregon. Will raise his average salary close to $11 million annually. Pretty good. Lanning's new deal, which is pending board approval, we know that's coming, will run for 6 years through the 2030 season, though his buyout to leave remains at $20 million. Chump change for a buyout these days. Dan Lanning is only 38. Let's see. He's been the Oregon coach now for 3 seasons, going on season number 4. Defensive coordinator prior to that at Georgia. He is a quick riser in the coaching industry. Look at this. 38 years old. He's already led Oregon to a 10-3 season his first year, finished close to the top 10. Then they follow that up and almost get to the college football playoff. They lose the Pac-12 championship game. And then this past year, first year in the Big Ten, they win the Big Ten championship. And there you see his record, 35-6. And they were the number 1 overall seed in the CFP before they lost the Rose Bowl to Ohio State. Got no problems with that. Dan Lanning has earned his money. He is in a good situation. There is no question about that. It's in a great situation. We've got Jim here for college football news. This is the place to be. Tukey G, good afternoon to you. And Jackson, thank you so much for showing up. Mike G, I can only imagine what he's got for us today. Next up on the headlines today, we've got a few other relevant topics. So Bill Belichick, I have not seen one of his news conferences in college football yet. I'm sure it's scintillating. I got to say, I did see some pretty amusing pictures with Bill Belichick and his girlfriend the other day. Those were those red carpet. He was at an NFL gala of sorts. And yeah, there were some pretty interesting photos there. And then it was funny because Snoop Dogg was leading up to a joke about Bill Belichick and his girlfriend, and it was pretty predictable. You could see it coming from about a mile away, but it was still funny because Snoop Dogg was just talking about time flies and all these changes in the NFL, and this is what used to be and how things have changed. And then he said something about, yeah, basically, for most of this stuff, Bill Belichick, his girlfriend, wasn't even born. Yeah. All right. So anyway, Bill Belichick is a head coach for North Carolina, besides everything else he's got going these days. And so let's see. For Bill, it's seeing North Carolina run through only 2 practices this spring, players in shorts and jerseys without names or numbers. So he's not making any grand pronouncements about the caliber of his team. But the one thing he says he feels confident in is the Tar Heels will be built his way and without compromise. I got to watch his news conference. I got to take this in. I don't really have any expectations. It's going to be up to each individual. I know we've got a good plan. I know we can do the right things to put together a great product on the field. Everybody that buys into it and wants to be a part of it will be a part of it. And if they don't, they can go somewhere else. That's their decision. Belichick said he has been encouraged by the team's progress since he arrived, though he said his early days of spring practice have not offered many insights. Opportunity to develop players, of course, contact and physicality, particularly in the run game and along the line of scrimmage, something that was difficult to do during mini camps and OTAs in the pros. We did not have pads to do anything like that. Contact is very limited in the NFL in the spring. There really isn't any. One group that won't have much contact are the quarterbacks. UNC's depth chart at the position is thin with Purdue transfer Ryan Brown. I did not know that he transferred to North Carolina. He got one start. He got a couple starts last year, and he played really well against Illinois. And true freshman Bryce Baker. Oh, I did not realize that Max Johnson was still with North Carolina. I guess I just figured that he was out of eligibility, although he got hurt in week 1, of course, is when he broke his leg against Minnesota. So Max Johnson, you would think that Max Johnson is going to be the starter. He's got so much experience, and he is a decent quarterback. Threw 27 touchdowns one year at LSU. Belichick said Johnson's getting better, and UNC was adjusting his workload each day based on how he responded to the previous day's efforts. Similar to a rookie mini camp, we're starting to put everything together. We haven't accomplished anything yet. And so not much more to look at there. David's here as well. Good to see you, Matthew Miller. Hey, Mark, I saw a question. Thought it was a good one. Does Vandy have a better chance to win the Big 12 or K-State winning 4 SEC games? Does Vandy have a better chance of winning the Big 12? So this is a question that we're never going to know the answer to. So it's a hypothetical. Gotcha. Vandy would win the Big 12, which last season was 7-2. 7-2 in the Big 12, and Vandy just went 3-5 in the SEC, but they played better than that. They went 6-6. They beat Bama, of course. They played within a field goal of Texas. They beat Auburn. I'm not claiming that Auburn was some great team, but they were still a talented team. They beat Virginia Tech. Who else did Vandy beat? Their 3 wins in the SEC must have been Alabama, Auburn, and Kentucky. They play just about everyone close. K-State going 4-4 in the SEC. Well, the problem with that question these days is we don't know what the SEC schedule would look like. Everybody's SEC schedule, would that be Texas SEC schedule or Oklahoma's SEC schedule? But I guess I'll split it down the middle, and I will say that it would be not much, but I think it's decidedly in Kansas State's favor going 4-4 in the SEC than it is for Vanderbilt to win the Big 12. Let's pull up to make it fair. Let's look at K-State's 2025 schedule for Vanderbilt to play, and then K-State's or Vanderbilt's 2025 schedule for K-State to play. I did not know that we were going to be comparing K-State and Vanderbilt today, but that's what the offseason's all about. All right, so if everyone can follow along here, we're looking at Kansas State's schedule to determine whether Vandy would win the Big 12 with Kansas State's schedule. Okay. And you can see, if it's on the screen here, what I've been purchasing lately. A lot of juice. Oh, it just popped up on me. There we go. Okay, so here we are with, so this is suddenly, everyone, play along. This is Vanderbilt's schedule. It's not Kansas State's schedule for this season. It's Vandy's schedule. Okay. Well, first of all, Vandy's going to go to Ireland to play Iowa State. I love this, by the way, that the Big 12 is going out there, and the Big 12, knowing that televisions are turned on to SEC and Big 10 games every Saturday. We did a TV ratings breakdown a few weeks ago, and it is pretty bad when you're looking at the Big 12 and looking at the ACC. Their highest rated games typically, unless it involves Colorado, their highest rated games are around 10th, 8th, 9th, 10th. Do you know what that means? That means that the SEC and the Big 10 games are all slotted the first 7 or 8 positions in the TV ratings. Get the most viewership. The first 7 or 8 games. That's a lot. That's 3 or 4 games per conference in the Big 10 and the SEC. They get more TV ratings than the top game in the Big 12 or the ACC, typically. That's why there's a discrepancy in the way the college football playoff is being treated and going to be formatted going forward. Back to this exercise, I just wanted to highlight that this is a good that's twice in one show. This is a good situation and a good move by the Big 12 to schedule 2 of their best teams and programs to play on week, whatever we're calling it, week 0. And I guess most likely nobody else is playing. There's usually only one decent game in week 0. Last year was Florida State, Georgia Tech. The year before, there was a Northwestern, Nebraska game one year. There was Nebraska, Illinois. There's usually one power conference game. That's it. And everybody watches that, and it gets a big number. So the Big 12 is working the powers that be, and well, they can schedule the games whenever they want, but usually there's just one power conference game, so they got it this year. So that's a good move by the Big 12, by the way. Iowa State, Kansas State. So they played their last regular season game against each other. Now they're playing their first regular season game against each other. So this would be Vandy in Ireland against Iowa State. They're probably going to lose that game. I'd say they've got a 35 to 40% chance of winning that game against Iowa State. All right. No, I've not done a deep dive on Vandy or Iowa State in terms of personnel gains and losses for this season. Although Iowa State, we were just talking about this with Leanne Herring on our recruiting show, did pick up a good receiver who's been at Colorado and East Carolina, Josh Soule. They picked him up for this season, but they lost probably the best tandem of wide receivers in the Big 12, Jalen Noel and Jaden Williams. So I'm going to go with Iowa State winning this game against Vandy. Then Vandy's going to beat North Dakota the next week, although they're one of the top programs in the FCS, and Vandy did lose to Georgia State last year. So with all the accolades we give Vandy, and I'm right there with you, they beat Virginia Tech, they beat Alabama, they hung with Texas, they played respectably against everyone, that they did lose to Georgia State. So they would be capable of losing at home against North Dakota. But we'll say Vandy's 1-1 at this point, and of course that's a non-conference game anyway. Army, they should win that game. Then back into the Big 12 play at Arizona. Arizona's terrible. And they're losing one of the best wide receivers in college football. But Noah Fafita is back. We'll see if Brent Brennan can bounce back Arizona. But they were terrible last year. They were getting blown up by 3 and 4 touchdowns most games. They went 2-7 in the Big 12. So Vandy's going to win that game. Then they're going to come off a bye week and they're going to be at home against UCF. They're going to win that game. Then they're going to go to Baylor. Vandy at Baylor. Toss up. Okay, we're going to keep Vandy in the conference running here by winning at Baylor. That brings them to 3-1. They would have TCU at home. And if you're tuning in right now, you have no idea what we're doing, talking about Vandy looking at a Kansas State schedule. But we will explain in a second. Okay, let's give Vandy another win against TCU. Again, that is a toss-up. Vandy would be playing, they would be right in there with TCU and Texas Tech and Kansas and playing all these toss-up games. Okay, they're 4-1 at this point. They go to Kansas. We've got to give Vandy a loss at this point. They're not going to defeat all these teams. They go to Kansas. They lose that game. They're 4-2. Then they come back for Texas Tech. Okay, they win that game. They're 5-2. They go to Oklahoma State. If Oklahoma State's anywhere close to as bad as they were last year, of course, Vandy wins that game. They're 6-2. Then they go to Utah. Oh, you know what? I bet one of these games is a conference, non-conference game because we're adding up to 10 games. So one of these games, this was really strange in the Big 12 last year. They had a Baylor-Utah game that did not count in the conference standings in Kansas State and Arizona. So that Kansas State-Arizona game must not count. I'm going to say that Vandy would go 6-3 against this schedule. They would have Colorado at home, preceded by Utah on the road. All right, Matthew. So what do you think? 6-3 for Vandy in the Big 12 would not most likely get them a championship. Although in a muddied Big 12, it could get them to the conference championship game and move them on to take a shot. Now, if we take Vanderbilt's schedule and give it to Kansas State, well, look at that. Is the internet just not, it just kind of freaks me out from time to time, and I don't get freaked out, so that's a over exaggeration. But I was on the phone with Lowe's today, so boom, what do I see? A Lowe's ad. All right, Vandy football. So this is Kansas State playing Vandy's schedule. So forget the non-conference games. South Carolina, Kansas State loses at South Carolina. Then they go to Alabama and lose. They've got LSU at home. They would win one of those games. Mizzou, I'm saying that they split those 4. Then they go to Texas. They're 2-3 at that point. They beat Auburn at home. They're 3-3. Then they got Kentucky and Tennessee. Yeah, I'm going to go Kansas State going 4-4. And I've got Vandy not quite winning the Big 12 at 6-3. It really is a toss-up. The Big 12 is crazy. I don't know who's going to win the Big 12 this year. Look at last year. Arizona State was picked by the media to finish last in the Big 12, and they finished first. I don't know anything. I am pretty positive that Cincinnati will continue to be lousy and Houston is going to continue to be lousy in the Big 12. And I believe that Arizona will be improved, but still lousy. And Scott Frost now at UCF, that's an interesting dynamic. Of course, he had tremendous success the first time around, but that was against the American Conference. And I would expect Kansas State's almost always contending for the championship. But Colorado without Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter now. So I'm pretty sure Iowa State's going to be really good. Kansas State's going to be really good. The rest of the conference, I don't know. Is Utah going to bounce back and be what they typically are? Matthew asking, how many SEC or Big Ten teams would you say 100% would win the Big 12? Well, basically none of them 100%, but I get your point. I don't believe in the 100%. I don't even think it's 100% certainty that Ohio State would win the Big 12. It's about a 94% certainty, but they could lose the conference championship game. All right, who's going to win the Big 12 out of the Big 10? Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State, Michigan. Those four for sure. I am convinced that those four out of the Big 10 would win the Big 12. And then I would definitely love to see Iowa, USC, and those would be the two next teams that I would be the most confident in going to the Big 12 and winning. I would put my money on Iowa and or USC winning the Big 12. No, I wouldn't put it outright against the rest of the conference. Like, I don't think that's even money, USC against the entire Big 12 or Iowa against the entire Big 12. But I would pick them over any other particular team in the Big 12. So now we're 6 deep. Then after that, I think Nebraska would have a shot this season. And that's it. Minnesota would have a shot. Indiana would have a shot. Okay. Out of the SEC going into the Big 12, Georgia wins, Texas wins, Alabama wins, LSU. Okay, let's start with those three. Texas, Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee. Much like the Big 10, I'm going to go with those four for sure. Then I'm going to say South Carolina, I'm taking against any particular team in the Big 12, not against the field, but I'm taking South Carolina. Oh, I'm gonna put Ole Miss in the first tier. I'm gonna put them in the first category. 5 teams in the SEC, 90-some% of the time, win the Big 12. Georgia, Texas, Bama, Tennessee, Ole Miss. South Carolina should win the conference. LSU should win the conference. Should. Texas A&M should win the conference. Okay, those 3. Who has a shot? Then you've got, I don't really give anybody else a shot, a decent shot of winning the Big 12 out of the SEC, except I think that they would make life murder on a number of teams at the top of the Big 12. I would not expect Arkansas to win the Big 12, or Missouri. They could win the Big 12. I'll put them in the second tier of teams that I would take as a betting favorite against any particular Big 12 team. I'll take Mizzou. Although, again, maybe I'm leaning a little bit too much toward what these teams were last year. And Matthew knows as well as anyone that the plus or minus 3 is very much in play. 29 teams, folks. 29 teams out of 70 last year either improved by 3 games at least or decreased by at least 3 games. You find me 29 teams in the Power 5 that could have that kind of surge this year one way or the other, up or down. That's crazy. I should do a video on that. Yeah, I don't think I did. Maybe I did. All right, Dave. Thank you. Appreciate that. Dave's here. Reminded me of Illinois. Yes, they would have a shot in the Big 12. They would have a legitimate shot to win the Big 12. Karen says Colorado's a toss-up. A toss-up. A toss-up. Did I miss something? Colorado's a toss-up. I know this is kind of a scattershot exercise that we really need, like, and John, thank you for responding. Do not need you. I had TJ jump in, and StreamYard is doing strange things that nobody could figure out, but that's fine. Oh, I forgot about Florida. Matthew, I skipped over Florida and I skipped over Illinois. I missed them. Yes, Florida. Florida wins the Big 12. They win the Big 12 85% of the time. Well, that might be a little much, but they're a favorite to win the Big 12. Karen is a toss-up on Colorado this year. Yeah, I typically, especially during these transfer portal times, allow spring practice to cycle through. Spring practice this time next month will be in the midst of spring games. I love the spring games, not because I love watching the spring games because they're boring, but if they're presented correctly, presented properly by the networks, then they become a TV show and they're fine. Then you get to hear from Dabo Sweeney and you get to hear about the quarterback battle. Well, there's no quarterback battle at Clemson. You hear about position battles and you hear about the trajectory of the team and the makeup of the team and the program. And it's a nice little TV show for 2 hours. That's what the spring game should be. And if I was the commissioner of college football, nobody is canceling a spring game. You would have an obligation to perform a spring game on television for your fans, for college football fans, just like everybody else does. So nobody would be canceling spring games if I was the commissioner of college football. And then I had somebody, when I mentioned that a couple of weeks ago, when we started to get all these spring game cancellations out of the likes of USC and Texas, that, well, you can't tell these coaches what to do. Why not? These coaches are told that they can only have 15 practices during the spring. They're told that they can only work these players X number of hours per week. They're told that they have to show up at their weekly news conference. They're told that they've got to show up after the game for their post-game news conference. We tell these coaches all sorts of stuff that has to take place. Tell them that they've got to play a spring game. And so what I like, especially now with the spring games and the transfer portal, is to get through April, and then I can reevaluate these teams, look at the personnel, look at the additions, subtractions, and then I can make my projections for the season and really break down where I think where these teams stand. I think Oklahoma would have a shot to win the Big 12. But I like that hypothetical there. All right. We also have, in addition to the College Football Playoff Committee, and I know I mentioned this as well yesterday. This is coming from Heather Dinich, that I really want to dive into this Clemson Florida State situation. I really want to get into that. And we know what we have, but I want to attack this from two angles. And I don't know if I'm going to have the time and be able to do it, but I want to look at Clemson and Florida State and the rest of the ACC, and I really want to make a projection on what that conference is going to look like in 5 or 6 years, and who could possibly leave for where. I also want to go through what's been decided, agreed upon, and been communicated to us concerning the revenue distribution, and if the season plays out as expected, what that revenue distribution will look like. So anyway, we'll attack that hopefully sometime in the next few days. What we have here is, as reported by Heather Dinich, former Michigan State coach Mark D'Antonio is one of 5 new CFP selection committee members named to the 13-member group tasked with ranking the top 25 teams. All right, so it's not just D'Antonio. You've got D'Antonio and Maryland Athletic Director Damon Evans, former ESPN college football reporter Ivan Maisel. Got a lot of respect for him. Middle Tennessee State AD Chris Massaro, and former Ole Miss All-America tight end Wesley Walls, who starred with the New Orleans Saints. Wesley Walls, yes. They're in the incoming class. The CFP also asked former USA Today sports writer Steve Weiberg, who served on the CFP selection committee for 3 years, to return for a 1-year term. He will replace former coach Gary Pinkel, who has stepped down. Rich Clark, the CFP executive director, says these are great new voices to the selection committee as we enter our 12th season. Each of them has tremendous knowledge, passion, and dedication to college football, along with outstanding character and integrity. Their skills and wide variety of experiences from coaches and athletes and blah, blah, blah. He's just going to state a lot of obvious things. Baylor AD Mac Rhodes, who is entering his second year with the group, will replace outgoing committee member and Michigan AD Ward Manuel as the committee chair, which should work out unless Baylor goes on NCAA probation. I am truly honored to be asked to, and possibly as a CFP caliber team, I am truly honored to be asked to serve as the chair of the selection committee. Blah, blah, blah. So those members are replacing Navy AD Chet Gadchuk, former Wake Forest coach Jim Grube. I know it looks like Grobe, but it's Grube. Former Nebraska offensive lineman and NFL Hall of Famer Will Shields, and former sports writer Kelly Whiteside. All right, we know about Mark D'Antonio, had a great run at Michigan State, was there from 2007 to 19, 13 seasons. Excellent record, 132-74, 12 bowl games, 3 Big Ten championships, and a berth in the 2015 CFP, winning as coach in the history of the school. Evans, the Maryland AD for 7 years, was hired in 2014 at Maryland as executive athletic director. 11-year tenure at Maryland. Maryland's won a bunch of Big Ten championships and everything, of course, excluding football. All right. Ivan Maisel. This guy used to do just tremendous work for first the Dallas Morning News and then ESPN and Sports Illustrated. He was great. Great, great, great. Massaro has been at Middle Tennessee State for 20 years. He's the 5th longest tenured AD. All right, all these people are qualified. I've got no issue with these people going to the College Football Playoff Committee. I just have an issue with the committee, period. But I got to admit, have they made mistakes? Very few. They have selected the right teams every season, in my estimation. I would make an argument in 2016 that Penn State should have been in the playoff. 2018, that, again, this is not their fault. This is more about the Notre Dame situation and not playing in a conference. 2020 was a difficult year to select. They did choose Cincinnati one year, but that was Cincinnati going undefeated and defeating Notre Dame, who was the only 11-1 team head to head. So the committee has made the selections that were right there for them to make. And then finally, we've got Wesley Walls, senior at Ole Miss in 1988, All-America tight end, Mississippi Sports Hall of Fame. And then the guys that are still on the committee, or the individuals, I should say, still on the committee: Nevada AD Chris Auld, former Arizona State All-America offensive lineman Randall McDaniel, Minnesota Vikings, former Oregon State and Nebraska coach Mike Riley, David Snyder, Miami, Ohio athletic director, Virginia AD Carla Williams, and Arkansas AD Hunter Yurachek. Dave's here says Clemson and Florida State got everything they wanted. Yeah, they did. They got an exit fee that is dwindling by the year by $18 million and is far less to start out with than what it was. And the media rights kind of go away as well. And that buyout's only going to be, that exit fee, I should say, is only going to be $75 million in 5 years. And that's why I think we really need to think about what the format of these leagues and what teams belong to these different conferences could look like in about 5 or 6 years. I know you say that on one hand, Dave, that they should be ashamed of themselves. Well, they're running businesses and they're trying to protect their own interests, so they should not be ashamed of themselves. Now, when you look at a 60-40 split of 60% goes by way of distributing the money to the teams that earn it based on the TV ratings versus the 40% that's split evenly, you got to say that that's still a pretty good deal. If we just solely based this on dividing the revenue and sending it to the teams that create the revenue, then Florida State and Clemson would be in far better position. And again, like we talked about the other day, I can't imagine that these conversations have not been had at places like Ohio State, Michigan, Alabama, LSU, etc. We're here Monday through Friday, 4 p.m. Eastern Time. Appreciate you being here. And this will be a guest-driven show to a certain extent going forward, but probably not for the next few weeks during March Madness. But we will be reaching out to some of the best people in college football to discuss the game that we love each and every day here with you. So you're going to get my take. You're going to get a run through the news. You're going to get one big topic per day. You're going to get the guests that you'd like to see. And of course, we're going to take your calls as well. Speaking of which, one more time in the chat, and then we will see if anyone wants to talk. And if not, then I will stop talking, and you will see more content out of me here soon concerning Clemson, Florida State, the ACC, the money distribution and what that looks like. And also, yeah, we'll continue to churn out some more schedule previews as well. All right, folks. Going once, going twice, going 3 times on the calls. Appreciate you being here. The Voice of College Football will be back Friday at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. See you then.